Philippians chapter 2, verse 14 begins our study tonight. Do everything without complaining and arguing. I think we need to make that into a billboard, don't you? And just put it all over, whether it's town, state, country. Let's just plaster this everywhere we can find it. Because we are in the midst of a time in our society that people have grown to love to complain. That phrase just doesn't even sound right, does it? People have grown to love to complain. Now, here's the challenge that we need to take in the church. If we're going to plaster this billboard all over society, then we have to take a look at ourselves. Because even in the church, we struggle with this verse. Throughout my life, both growing up in the church and as a minister, I've seen far too many examples of where this verse has been either broken or ignored. And it's concerning to me. Now, I want to begin tonight by just giving you an example of just how prevalent this is in the church today. In fact, I've come up with 5 different categories of complainers. I wanted to have fun with this, but it's not funny. So let's just start. The first person is the chronic complainer. This is the person that has a problem for every solution. This is the person that can find a problem and something to be concerned about, something to dislike, something to critique for every single thing that takes place in the church. The building's too hot. No, it's too cold. It's too bright. It's not bright enough. I mean, there is always something to complain about. And it's just the person that, boy, if you see that person walking toward you, or if you see their caller ID come up on your phone, your head just kind of drops and you're like, man, what's it going to be today? Nobody, I don't think anyone wants to be known as a chronic complainer. But yet history in the church tells us that we have had those in the church. Now, at least with the chronic complainer, we know who the person is. It's the anonymous complainer that really, I think, stirs up the seeds. It's the recipe for dissension in the church. This is the person who goes in the veil of secrecy to an elder, or in the veil of secrecy in the corner with another member, who writes the anonymous letter. Or it's like the person that one church where I was a number of years back that took our Sunday announcement sheet and just like an English teacher would do, graded it in red pen, encircled it, marked it, and scribbled on it, and then left it in our box for us to find the next morning. The anonymous complainer of all of these has such an ability to discourage. Then there's the untimely complainer. I think back years ago, I watched a preacher, my minister. I watched him just absolutely take a browbeating right before worship. It was in the auditorium. It was in front of a lot of people, so all those people saw it, and I watched him take that. I watched him receive that. And then only moments later, he stood in the pulpit to proclaim the gospel. Now, I will suggest to you that the manner in which this took place was not appropriate, but the timeliness of it could not have been worse. When a preacher is preparing to proclaim the gospel, that's not the time to voice your complaint of the day. Set up an appointment. Make a phone call. But do that in an appropriate way. But the same thing holds true just in the church in general and society in general. The fourth category is really just the person that just likes to vent. Man, when they come to you, they have a full head of steam. But once they get it out, all things are good and all is well. The problem with that is that I may not always be in a position to receive that, to be the recipient of your venting. We need to remember that about each other. I don't need to go to you and just, boy, I've just got to get this off of my chest, and so I just explode. I just have to get it out. Venting is something that is not always considered of the person on the other end, right? And then finally, there's the person with clean hands. Here's why I bring them up. The person with clean hands is the person that often critiques ministries or ideas in the church. But yet when it's time to have volunteers step up as a teacher, to make a phone call, to write a card, to make a visit, to be involved in any ministry of the church, this person has clean hands. What does that mean? This person's not involved in anything. They just sit and complain. I have always had a mentality, right or wrong, I believe I'm right. I've always had a mentality that if we are in this ministry together, our hands are working on this, and boy, they're getting dirty together. We are really doing our very best. When we talk to each other, if you have a complaint or a concern, you know what, I'm really much more likely to take that because I know that you're not just sitting in the back observing. You're actively involved in the work of the church. We're in this together. Now here's the sad thing, is that in the midst of all of that, there are people, a good brother or a good sister, that has genuine concern, that has a question, that has a concern. That word just keeps coming up, and I think about that. Maybe it's about a lesson that was presented. Maybe it's about a new ministry that's being suggested. But here's the thing, church leaders, whether it's elders, deacons, ministers, teachers, some of us have been the recipients of this complaint for so long. I've got 30 years of that under my belt. And so I don't always receive that really like I should. Because there are people that are very sincere in their question. It might be that the person who has a question about the lesson is really, actively studying her Bible, and she's really involved in this. In fact, what I said is something that dealt with her Bible study, and she's just wanting to dig deeper. That's a good thing. Asking those questions, that's a good thing. This person that may have a question about this new ministry, he comes up to me and he says, hey, I've got a question about this new thing that we're doing. And so because of the way that the wording has been said in past history, I'm like, whoa. But the reason he may be asking that is because he wants to be involved. He's listening because he's trying to find out a way that he can be involved in the work of the church. Now, I've spent way too much time on that. I've got to be honest about it. But there are seasons that it seems like receiving criticism is like an appointment on a calendar. It just happens, whether it's every Sunday or every Wednesday or every service. I hope that we see the importance in this particular season. I hope that we see the importance that what we need to be doing in the church, that these are unique times. We are coming out of a difficult season. We are watching things have opportunity to rekindle, to restart. I pray that leads to revival. And so this is an important time for us in the church for wise decisions. So, if you're that brother or sister and you've got you've got a question about the lesson, always feel free to ask that. And if I don't receive your question in the way that you intend, please accept my forgiveness for that. And work with me, be patient with me through that. As we talk about new ministries and new ideas, if you have a question about that and you're looking to get involved in that, then by all means, please ask those questions. Because we look forward to working together for the good of the Lord in this place. This is a time for wise decisions. And so the best decisions, the wisest decisions that are going to be made involve people praying together and discussing together. And so we want to make sure that we're doing that. And so we have opportunity to look at this season as a time for wise decisions, because the path that we are taking right now, the decisions we're making right now, will lead us down a path that can lead us to a season of growth like the church has never seen in our generation. I think about some churches that the ultimate destination for them, the point of arrival, their goal, man, we just want things back the way they were. If that's the only goal, then can I remind us that where we were was in a season of decline. And what the pandemic has done is it has revealed problems that were already there. So they're there. It has also sped them up. And so if all we want to do is go back to the way things were and it was a season of decline, that decline is going to take place faster. And we're going to see more churches, more congregations close their doors in the generation ahead. We don't want that to be us. We want to be God's people, effective in this generation and in the generations to come. So the decisions we make right now, well, man, they're just that important. Here's the thing I need to keep before us. The fields are ripe for harvest. Hear me again, church. The fields are ripe for harvest. There are people who want to hear the gospel. There are people who are searching. We need to remember that. The fields are ripe for the... But the path isn't going to be easy. The easy path would be to just go and let's just try to make sure we get everything exactly the way it was before the pandemic began to shut things down. That's the easy path. Man, tell you what, let's just do it easy. But that's not the path that will lead to growth. Now, I'm not talking about compromising the truth. The truth will be proclaimed. I hope that you knew that, but I needed to state that just in case there's any question at all. But this path is not going to be easy. Therefore, it is important that we encourage one another. You know, one of the things that I think about that we can do, even in this point that where we have looked at this, I've used words like complain and I've used words like concern. You know what? You can ask a question about a lesson and it encourage your preacher. You can ask a question about a new idea or a new ministry, and you can encourage that person that's leading that. Sometimes it's just all about, man, we need to be praying about the questions that we want to ask, that we ask them in a way that will lift others up. I think that is extremely important during this season. So here we are. We've been talking about really the body of an encouragement. We began by talking about the mind. We need to think like an encourager. We need to be thinking constantly about how we can encourage other people, other brothers and sisters in Christ, and people that we could lead to Christ. We want to have the eyes, man. We want to look for those opportunities to be able to encourage other people. Who's here? Who's not? Who could I invite? Who do I need to reach out to? Who can I talk to? We want to encourage other people. We also need to listen, right? We need to listen for needs. Because everybody is in a different boat right now. They've had different things going on in their seasons of life. One of the things that I've been reminded of on a regular basis is that people are facing different challenges in life. Now, there are certain things that are common to all of us, but there are other things that, you know what? Man, it's unique to the individual. So we need to listen for that and how we can encourage. So tonight, we come to the mouth. We come to the mouth of the encourager, the words we use, those words that come out of our mouth every day. We're wanting to make sure that we use those in a way that honors God and lifts others up, that it instills. This is what encourage really means. Encourage literally means to fill with courage. And so the words we use, we want to use them to fill others with courage. All right. So I want to start in Proverbs. These really are, if you will, just one-sentence sermons. I don't have any commentary to say. I don't have anything to add to this because the wise man has done such a wonderful job of it. Proverbs chapter 12, verse 25. Anxiety weighs down the heart, but a kind word cheers it up. Anxiety weighs down the heart, but a kind word cheers it up. Proverbs chapter 15, verse 4. A soothing tongue is a tree of life, but a perverse tongue crushes the spirit. Proverbs 16, verse 24. Gracious words are a honeycomb, sweet to the soul and healing to the bones. Proverbs chapter 18, verse 21. The tongue has the power of life and death, and those who love it will eat its fruit. Then Proverbs chapter 25, verse 11. Like apples of gold in settings of silver is a ruling rightly given. So important words from the wise man there as we look at how we can use our words to lift others up, to fill them with courage. Like I said now, each one of these verses, it really is a sermon all by itself. I didn't add anything to that. I just wanted to give that time just to soak in. I think back, man, a soothing tongue is a tree of life, but a perverse tongue crushes the spirit. Man, that's a one-sentence sermon. That's the kind of verse that we need to be writing on index cards and taping around the house. Words that will encourage us to be an encouragement to others. Making sure that we keep those particular verses, passages from God's Word before us. So we have those one-sentence sermons, and there they are. The power of the tongue. Did you notice that theme come up in Proverbs? Want to stick with that theme as we turn to the book of James. You kind of knew that I'd be heading there, right? James chapter 3. If we're going to talk about the mouth of an encourager and the words we use, we have to come to the book of James. This practical book on Christianity. In chapter 3, beginning in verse 1, James writes, Not many of you should become teachers, my fellow believers, because you know that we who teach will be judged more strictly. We all stumble in many ways. Anyone who is never at fault in what they say is perfect, able to keep their whole body in check. When we put bits into the mouths of horses to make them obey us, we can turn the whole animal. Or take ships as an example. Although they are so large and are driven by strong winds, they are steered by a very small rudder wherever the pilot wants to go. And so what we look at here in this first point, these first section of verses, is that the tongue has the power to direct. We have the power to direct. With our words, we can lift others up or we can crush their spirit. James, in each of these points, is going to give two examples. And in this first point, the power to direct, he uses the example of the bit in the mouth of a horse and a rudder on a ship. I find this interesting when you look at the fact that a horse is a powerful animal. And there might be some resistance. This ship, large ship, is facing wind and waves. There will be some resistance. Still, the bit in the mouth of the horse has the power to direct the horse. The rudder on this ship, compared to that ship, boy, it is a small instrument, but yet it can steer that ship in a direction. And so it is with our mouth. One of the things that I've done over this particular week, this past week, is to begin a new challenge. And each day for 21 days I want to go through and I want to list 3 things for which I'm thankful. Every single day. 3 things for which I'm thankful. The first day, to give an example, I thought about different teachers in my life. I thought about those Sunday school teachers who were always willing to listen and to try to answer the difficult questions. I thought about the teachers at school that taught me a spirit of excellence. And then the football coaches that I had, or other coaches, that they taught me just not to give up. And so that first day was dedicated to teachers in my life. And then the second day I prayed about my health and gave thanks for my health and different things like that. And then Friday I thought a lot about the blessings of energy and of light and of air conditioning and those that work every day to make sure that we have those conveniences of life. And so that was really the subject of the third day. Just to give you an example, I think that's a great challenge for all of us to go through, and just for a series of days, be sure to think of 3 specific things for which you're thankful. You can't go wrong with that mentality. That is setting us on a direction where we can direct our words in a positive manner. James chapter 3 verse 5 says, "Likewise the tongue is a small part of the body, but it makes great boast. Consider what a great forest is set on fire by a small spark. The tongue is also a fire, a world of evil among the parts of the body. It corrupts the whole body, sets the whole course of one's life on fire, and is itself set on fire by hell. All kinds of animals, birds, reptiles, and sea creatures are being tamed and have been tamed by mankind. But no human being can tame the tongue. It is a restless evil full of deadly poison." And so in this section we're talking about the tongue and its power to destroy. Now understand this. In these 2 examples that he gives when he's talking about this idea, he's talking about this idea of fire and of poison. Fire and poison actually can both be used in a positive way. But in this context, that's not how James is discussing that, is he? When he's talking about fire and he's talking about a deadly poison, he's talking about their power to destroy. I've had Camp Curios on my mind the last couple of days. Things are really looking up for camp this year. Missed it last year tremendously. And I know a lot of our youth, man, you're looking forward to going to camp this year. Registration, if all works out, will be open in a few days. Check out the Camp Curios Facebook page, or you can go to their website and look at that to see when registration officially fires off. Look forward to getting back into camp. All right, so one of my favorite parts of camp, I think back to old days, and Rusty Meadows taught me this song. I couldn't sing it now if I had to. But it was at a rowdy campfire. And it talks about, it's a song that talks about old Leary's barn. It talks about kicking over the bucket, and next thing you know, there's fire. It's a funny song at the rowdy campfire. But in real life, it was not. October 8th, 1871, in Chicago, a fire broke out. It's known as the Great Chicago Fire. And it began in old Leary's barn. But let me just give an example of some of the damage that was caused. The fire destroyed 17,500 buildings. It left 100,000 people homeless. And in all, it claimed the lives of 300 people. That fire cost the city $400 million. That was in 1871. That is the power of fire to destroy. And what James would tell us is that the tongue has that same kind of power. Knowing that, we need to use our words carefully, right, church? Because we know that the tongue has the power to direct. We know that the tongue has the power to destroy. But I want to close out with some good news. James chapter 3, verse 9. With the tongue we praise our Lord and Father, and with it we curse human beings who have been made in God's likeness. Out of the same mouth come praise and cursing. My brothers and sisters, this should not be. Can both fresh water and salt water flow from the same spring? My brothers and sisters, can a fig tree bear olives or a grapevine bear figs? Neither can a salt spring produce fresh water. All right, so what James is talking about, and I'm going to call this the power to delight. Because what James talks about, this idea of fresh water, he says, you know what, man, there can be, this water source, it's either going to be salty or fresh. It's going to taste bad or it's going to taste good. And what he's challenging us is to think of our mouths, think of the words we use as a fountain overflowing with fresh water that has the power to delight those who listen. It's also thinking of this fresh fruit that comes from a tree that has the power to bring delight to the one who picks it and who has the opportunity to eat it. And so what James would challenge us to do is to use our words in a way that bring delight that can be a blessing to others. The power to direct, the power to destroy, the power to bring delight. Our tongue is a powerful instrument. Experts say we use somewhere between 25 and 40,000 words a day. That's a lot of words, isn't it? If we're going to use that many words a day, then we would do really well to let the Bible provide some guidance in how we speak. And when we think about this idea of the tongue and speaking and just communication in general, the Bible provides that kind of instruction, direction, and command. It's found more than 2,500 times in the Bible. So don't you think it's a good idea for us to feast on God's Word? And to get those one-sentence sermons like in the book of Proverbs, when we find those, write those down. Write it on an index card or a Post-it note. Put it in a place that's familiar to us, where we can see it, where it can constantly remind us of the things we need to talk about, the way that we can encourage other people. What an opportunity we have. We have this opportunity to do good, to build others up, to bring delight to others. We have opportunity right now in the words we use to be a blessing to the church and in the lives of people that can impact the church both today and for an entire generation to come.